Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Merv Barrett from Real Estate Connected, and today I want to show you how to install FeedSync using cPanel on your web server. So the first thing we need to do is download the FeedSync app from your members account on realestateConnected.com. Once you've done that, you're going to have a zip file, and I usually just chuck it on the desktop for you to have a look and see how it works. So if I'm going to open up the zip file, inside you'll see one folder called FeedSync, and inside there's all the application folders. You have the input directory, which is where you'll tell your feed provider to upload the XML files, and then you've got the outputs folder, which will be where the three final output files will be located that you can hook into using, say, WP All Import or WP Property XML Importer, just to name a couple WordPress plugin applications that you can use to display listings. And you've got the process folder. So once a file is processed in the input folder, it's moved to the process folder in its original format. You've also got the libraries, which is where the application is, and inside here you've just got two files to worry about, which is the index, which is just the main application loading its home page, and mainly the settings file. So we'll touch on that once I've installed it on the server, and we can see how that works and how we set that up. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using an FTP application like FileZilla to upload the files, I'm just going to stick with cPanel because everybody who uses a cPanel web server can quickly gain access and upload files. So I've created a website at my demo site called FeedSync Demo, and currently there's nothing in the folder, and this is where we're going to upload the application into. So I'm going to hop over. I've already logged in to my cPanel account, and as you probably have seen other cPanel, it's pretty similar with all the different functions and options you can change in your cPanel. But I'm just going to jump over to the file manager through cPanel, and I'm just going to browse. So next I'm going to jump and find that FeedSync demo folder, and we're going to upload the FeedSync zip file, and we'll just use the server to uncompress it. You can uncompress it first or however you feel like you want to do it. But in my recommendation when installing this is to actually create a folder, because this would be, for example, if you're using WordPress, your WordPress files will be all in here. So usually what I recommend is to create a new folder, and I usually just call it XML in capitals. Now, so we'll create that folder, and now we're just going to jump into the XML folder, and I'm going to upload that zip file. So I'm just going to choose upload, and I'm going to select my file from the desktop and find in here the FeedSync file. So press to open, and next it's already done, it's pretty small, so I'm going to close that, and if we reload the file manager page, we'll see the zip. So next thing to do is select that and choose extract, and that will extract the files and the folder inside. So now we'll have a pile of files. So it's created a folder called FeedSync, which we'll see in a second. So I'll just refresh the page, and you'll see the directory FeedSync. I'll leave the zip file in there for now. So if I browse into here, we're going to see what we just saw on the inside the zip file. And if we browse to the FeedSync page on where you've set up your web server, we're going to jump in the XML folder, and here's our FeedSync. Now we haven't told when you first install the application, we need to set some settings, otherwise you're going to end up with something that it doesn't know where it is currently living. So that's where we need to now jump across to the settings and just change a couple settings in the settings file, and we'll be good to go. So I'll just jump over to the file manager again, and we're going to just choose settings.php and press code editor. I usually just leave it as standard and press edit, which is the UTF-8, and here we go. So here, first thing we need to do is just set some of these defaults, and you'll see down the bottom that says do not edit anything below this line. So this is where FeedSync sets up its other instructions, but basically we need to just set up the base URL, the developer title, and your username and password if you have when you purchase the license, so you can check for updates as we release them. So the first thing we need to do is tell FeedSync where does it live on the internet. So if we browse back here, okay, so here's our full URL, so I'm just going to select that in my browser and choose copy. Next, we'll jump back to that file and we're going to replace this including that trailing slash, and that's where it lives. Next, I'll just press save. And if we refresh this page, we should have what looks a bit better. There we go. So now it knows where it's looking. It's like when you set up WordPress, it kind of needs to know where it lives. We're not using any database to store any information, so we need that settings file to tell the FeedSync app where does it live. And that's the setup that's required in that particular sense. And we haven't got any files. If there was any files, you'd see them here. So I'll upload a couple demo files so you can see them appear below. So I'm going to jump back to our file manager, and I'm going to go to the input folder, and I'm just going to upload one test XML file. So I'll just choose the upload button again, and I'll choose another file, and I've just saved some test files in here, and instead of doing the big one, let's just pick a small one. So I'm going to open the third one so we can reference that in a minute and see how that was processed, and it's only small, so that's done. So I'll refresh this page again, and there's our XML file. Now I'm just going to bring that XML file up, and you can have a quick look at what that file looks like when it's opened in a browser. Actually, we can do that straight from the Chrome browser. We jump back to FeedSync and we'll reload the page. You should see that there's one file ready for processing, and if you click that, you'll be able to browse that XML file. So if you've looked at any XML files, this is pretty standard. So there's a residential property element, and the status is current, and there is only one file in here at the moment. That's fine. So I'll go back and let's just take a look. Now, before we process the feed, if you have any queries, just jump over to the Help tab, and here's some installation instructions like we're just running through now on the video, and just what you need to set up and how you can get that all working for you quickly and easily. So I'll go back to home and let's just process the feed. It's quite a simple app. It's designed to be easy to use and set up as a cron job, so you're not going to be coming back here to constantly process it. Once we've set the cron job, that will happen automatically on a time schedule. But as you can see, we've pressed processed, and here we go. So it's processed the files, it's mentioned the file that's been processed, and it's updating the process files, and it's created 3 output files. So let's take a look at those. So we click on outputs, we've got 3 files here. We got the current one, and it's created the other 2 as it does, but there's nothing in there at this stage because none of those were available. But let's have a look at the current file. So there we go. There's our residential property with the current tag. Okay, so let's. Oh, I must have missed another one. There was 2 files in the input file. So there's a rental and a residential property. So 2 input files. So let's next put a few more files into the FeedSync app and see how it processes those. And I've disabled the geocoding, and we can run through how to add that geocoding information after we've run a few tests to make sure it all works for you quite easily. So I'm going to jump back to the file manager, and if we reload this folder, which we put in the input, there should be no files in there except for the index, which is correct. And if we go up one level and we can have a look at the outputs file, you see that the 3 files there are output, and back again, and we can check the processed, and there's the 2 files that have been processed. I think I left one behind. So let's go back and chuck a few more files in the input folder and see how it handles several files at once. Now I'm going to FTP them because there are a few files, so I'll just do that right now, and we'll reload the page, and you should see a few more files in there in the folder. Okay, so I'm just going to upload those files. Bear with me. Okay, let's drag a dozen files in there and see how that works. Okay, so I've uploaded those, so I'll reload the page, and I've put them in the wrong folder, which is pretty standard when you're doing too many things at once. Let me just refresh 1 second. So I managed to put them in the wrong folder, but let me just reload. Okay, so there we have a stack of input files that have been uploaded into the inputs folder. And if we go back to the FeedSync app and reload the home page, you should see that we've got all those files are available to be processed and imported. So I'm just going to press process feed, and it's very quick when there's no geocoding because it's not asking Google for the coordinates for each element. But there's the list of process files and the outputted folders. So we check the outputs again. So there we go. We got a bit more happening here. We got the current, which is now 22 kilobytes. So there's a few listings in there. We've got the sold leased, which has got 4 kilobytes of sold leased, so a few of them, and it's pulled out some withdrawn properties. Now I recommend when you first run the FeedSync, especially if you're dealing with a file that's 300 kilobytes, is to run it first without the geocode, because you may not deal with the withdrawn at all. So that's why we're splitting these files up so that you can pull out the withdrawn, we can reprocess the current and sold with the geocode information, and then we should be good to go to import it into whatever software you use. We use WordPress a lot for our websites, and we are very fond of WP All Import. It's a great application to import any sort of XML files or CSVs. So I encourage you to take a look at WP All Import if you have a chance. Now, if we take a look at the current file, we'll be able to see what's been imported. So we got a rental, which is current. Close that one there, and we should see it's a residential. And so it's brought in some land. So this particular files of rentals and land. So we got a few elements there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got those properties. Now if a property comes through again with the same unique ID of the property, it will overwrite that. So if when an agent adds a home open time, or they might add update the text or change some photos, all that information will be overwritten in the current file so that when you go to import them, you've got the latest stuff. You'll notice that there's some geocoding here. The actual input files that I used already had the geocode data saved, but if it was not in there, it would not geocode them. So we can run through the geocoder in a minute, and I'll clean up some files before I do that so you can see how the geocoder actually works. So let's just go back. So at its core, it's pretty simple software, but it does a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes in how it processes the files. Okay, I've trimmed up the import file, so I've got a bit of a bigger one. Usually when you start with a customer, they have a initial FeedSync, which will include all the different properties that they may have already had in their system, and it's usually a lot bigger than the continual updates that are usually 5 to 15 kilobytes in size. The first one here, for example, is 322 kilobytes. So the first input file that I received for this particular client is quite large, with all the different withdrawn and current and sold. So let's just process this one and see how that works in the FeedSync processor. So I've cleaned up all the settings for FeedSync and all the input files. I've deleted them all, so you can see that there'll be none in the input folders or none in the output folders. So I'll put the new input file uploaded there. I've just used FileZilla, but you can just use cPanel by uploading. So let's just refresh. So let's take a look. So we got one file, that's the first one that's ready to go. I've removed the geocode information from that, which is not there, so we can add that later, and you can see how to add the geocode coordinates to each of your property elements. So let's just check the imports. There's nothing there, and the outputs folder says it's ready to go. So let's just process the first file and let's see what it does. So bingo, in a few seconds it's already completed the process for the 300 kilobytes. And if we check out the imported file, there's that file. It's been moved, and the outputs folder now has split that one big file into 3 separate ones. So there's the withdrawn, the sold, and the current. So we take a look there, you'll just see current, there's a rental, another rental that's current. So just keep closing these and you'll be able to see the current there. So that's all the different property types. And the land, so we got land, rental, and residential. This will work for any property elements such as commercial land, business, holiday rentals, and rural as well. So let's just take a look now at the sold. So I'll just open that up. So there's leased, leased. So leased and sold are stuck in the same file. Okay, there's lots of rentals. This is a big rental company. Does lots of rental properties. And if we scroll down a bit further, we should see some residential. I'll do a search. So there's some solds, residential, and I guess if we look through, there might be some land in here as well. Land, sold. And again, the withdrawn will have the withdrawn or off-market ones that are being withdrawn from the market. So there we go. So that's separated those files and put them across. So now what we want to do is, let's say we want to add the geocodes. You're happy with the way the feeds worked. You said you've pulled out the withdrawn, so we don't need to worry about re-geocoding those because you're not probably going to be using anything with them. So what we'll do now is we're going to download these two files and put them back in the input folder, but we're going to enable the geocoding option in the settings file this time. So if we jump back over to our file manager, and I'll reload this page and go up, and we'll check out the outputs folder, which is where it saves the files, and I'm just going to download these. Now I'll use my FileZilla to do that, just for speed and ease of use for me. And here we go. So I'll just create a new folder. Now once you've set this up, as soon as the elements have been uploaded to the server via the feed provider, you won't need to do any of this. It should all take care of itself. It's just you want to make sure that it's all working for you. So let's just download those files into here, and I'm just going to rename them. It's important to rename them because the way the FeedSync works is every time there's a unique file name, it makes a change. So let's just put test in there, or new, you could put like that, and let's just append I'll even put a date in there, 14 for 2014. Okay, so I'm going to drop these two files back into the input. I'm going to upload them back into the import folder. So we go back to our uploads. I'll go up one level and go to the input folder, and let's just upload our two files that I've just saved. So put that in there, and again choose the sold leased. Okay, so now if we reload this input folder, we got the two test files there. Now what we want to do is go back to the settings file. Let's close all these so I don't make a mistake. Go up one level, and we'll just edit the settings file, and there's just one little line where you need to make a quick change to enable the geocoding. So I'm just going to press edit on the settings file again, and I'll choose the other editor, the code editor. It highlights the colors a bit better, and we can see what's the different elements. One thing I didn't touch on is you'll see the developer title. Now I've just called it FeedSync, but if you want to customize this for your own purpose, so you could have Joe's Design or something like that, Joe's Design, and you can put in whatever URL you want so that your customer can go there and get access to your site. An apostrophe is always a pain with PHP, so avoid apostrophes because it's how PHP validates. If you're using an apostrophe, you just need to change these to a hash so that it doesn't get doesn't break the code. So let's put Joe's Design. I don't even know if they exist, but anyway. And next we scroll down, and there's a geocoding on or off. So here you go. You just need to change the off to on and press Save Changes. So if we reload or go back to the FeedSync, press the home button, you'll see Joe's Design, and if you click that, it'll go to a website that may or may not exist at the moment, but whatever you set there, so your client can come and if there's any issue and they want to check how the feed's working and they're saying, hey, it's not working, they can review this page, and if there's no files here, or if there's a lot of files, there might be something might be some sort of issue, and you can always contact us on the support to take a look and help you out with that. But let's process the feed. It's going to take a bit longer because each element will be geocoded on the import. So let's process that one. It might take a minute or so, because every property element will be saying, hey Google, here's our address, please provide us the coordinates, and then we save those coordinates. Still very quick, but if you've got 6,000 elements or properties in one file, first of all you're going to hit the ceiling that you're allowed, which is 2,500. So if you do have an exceptionally large feed to set up in the beginning, I'd recommend breaking it up into doing it over a couple of days so you don't exceed your 2,500 limit. But I'll scroll down. So here we go. So it tells you what address is done, it's got the latitude and longitude output there, and it's done that repeatedly over all these properties, and then it's created the files. Now sometimes you'll see duplicates. What happens is perhaps a property's in there a couple of times and it's outputted that a little bit funny, I guess. So let's check out the outputs file. So there we go. So we've got the 3 files again, the current, the sold, and the withdrawn. And if we browse this, we'll be able to find the geocode entry that's been saved, which is right there. So each element will have now a geocode address stored within the address block. And you can see there it's repeated. So each of these, and -31 is the southern hemisphere, and these are in Western Australia. So they're all being geocoded quite well. And it's very fast and quick to use. So that's how you do that. Now once you jump and set up the file, you can jump to the help and check for updates, but we haven't put a license key in there, and once you do, it'll tell, hey, you've got an update. You can check the status and activate your license through the help page there. So we'll check that again. Again, you can scroll down the bottom, and sometimes you might be hitting the ceiling with the geocode. So let's just check the status. What that does is just ask Google for one address, and it says, hey, here's the address, which is Mountain View, California, for the Google address. And if it's successful, it'll say successful. If it's unsuccessful, it'll say you've reached your limit. But at the moment, we're fine. So next, let's go back, and if you go to the home page again, there's no files waiting to be processed. But if we upload a few more files in there, let's choose a couple more of the original test files, and I'll just say download another, those ones there, and I'll put them into the input folder. And if we go back to FeedSync, refresh, you'll see that the files are ready and waiting to be processed. So again, this is going to look at these elements, compare them to the original file, and move the elements around depending on whether they're current, sold, leased, or withdrawn, or under offer. Withdrawn or off market. Under offer is just a flag, yes and no. So let's process the feed again. Like I said, it's going to geocode the elements as they go through, and that happens pretty quickly. So there we go, it's updated some files, it's processed all the files, and if we check our output, so I'll just refresh, and there's all our files have been processed fine. So if we check our sold, leased, they've got the lease tag and the geocode information. So that's pretty much how FeedSync works. Now one part I forgot to mention was your XML password and username. It's just what is written inside the FeedSync. Inside the original XML files. We check out our imported files, we'll have a username and password that's provided by the feed provider. So it's a good idea to overwrite those instead of leaving it as your name and password. As I put in there, you can put COMAUS and keep them consistent. And I'll just save that again. So next time it imports a file, it'll add the COMAUS to the top of the site, to the top of the XML file. And that's pretty much how FeedSync works. It's a pretty simple program, but it's more simple in that I tried to make it as easy to use for a user to install and set up quickly. And the last thing we want to touch on is how to set up the cron job. So if we jump over to the help page, there are some instructions and how to set up your cron job here. So using cPanel, we just need to set up a regular cron job, which basically copy this information, and we're going to create a new cron job through cPanel. So I'll jump over to the cPanel that I've logged in, and if you choose cron jobs, my recommendation is to set it to every hour. So what that means is every hour it will check the file, the folder, the input folder, and run it. You can also increase it to twice an hour. Try as much or as little as you want. It depends on how often you want to run your imports from this. If you have it every 5 minutes, it might be a bit heavy, but there may be no files in there anyway, so you can have it run pretty regularly. I'll put it in as every 5 minutes. So if I paste that in there and add a new cron job, and what that'll do is it'll add a cron job here, so we'll see user bin. So in 5 minutes it will reprocess the files. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the FeedSync homepage, and I'll put in a few more files in the feed, and you can see them process. I'll pause the video for 5 minutes and we'll be able to see it running again. So let me just go to the input folder, and I'm just going to upload, say, another pile of test files into the input folder and refresh the page, and we won't process it, and then you'll see I'll pause the video for 5 minutes, come back, and these will be processed. Okay, so 5 minutes have passed, and let's see if this has processed the feed. So I'm just going to reload the page, and there we go. So the files have no longer available on the home page, so that means they've been processed. And if we take a look at the outputs folder, we'll see that the files have been processed there. So that's how FeedSync works, and it's a very quick and easy to set up application that should process your files quickly and easily. So if you have any queries, just go down and visit us on the support page. You can send me an email at merv@realestateconnected.com.au, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. But I encourage you to purchase it, and I can provide you any support you need to set it up, or if you have any troubles that you run into. We want to make our application robust and as easy to use as possible. So please let me know if you have any trouble. Chat later. Bye.